Hey everyone, welcome to On Tap. My name is Chris, and what better way to kick the channel off than by talking about arguably the most famous American craft brew in American history, Sam Adams. Let's get started. The Boston Beer Company was founded in 1984 by Jim Koch and Rhonda Kalman. Yes, it's pronounced Koch, even though it's spelled Koch, because Koch just means cook in German. Koch was part of a brewing family that had allegedly been brewing beer in their home state of Ohio for 6 generations. Now, as we linguistically deduced, the Kochs were German, or they may have actually been Austrian. Why Austrian? Well, the family beer recipe that Jim Koch used was for a Vienna-style lager. So Koch could brew beer, but he had something else going for him. Notably, he was smart. I don't mean regular smart, I mean 2 master's degrees from Harvard smart. JD, MBA. Yeah. That really helps if you're trying to build up a business. So in the 1980s, Koch was working as a consultant and started doing some analysis on the American beer market. Given how god-awful most of the beer was at the time that American companies were producing, Koch saw an obvious business opportunity. Using some good old-fashioned marketplace analysis, it was time to get going. Koch used his financing skills to raise the money necessary to start the brewery, while also kicking in a fair amount of money on his own. He named the beer Sam Adams after the American patriot and founding father because, let's be honest, what better way to convey the spirit of America than by naming your beer after a founding father? And also, interestingly enough, Sam Adams himself was a prolific brewer and inherited the tradition from his father, just like Jim Koch. In 1985, Koch launched the brewery, serving the first batches of beer during Patriots' Day weekend in Boston. And the rest is history. The beer was a massive success. 6 weeks after release, the beer was voted the greatest beer in America by the American Beer Festival. By the 1990s, the company went public, and Jim Koch eventually became a billionaire from his innovation. So remember kids, stay in school. In recent years, Sam Adams has developed a reputation of being a sort of mega craft brewery. The company's so large at this point that some people even wonder if it should still be considered a craft brewery. And to give you some perspective on that, in 2018, Sam Adams produced 4.3 million barrels of beer, and that's American barrels of beer, 31 gallons of beer per barrel, which is a lot of beer. And for another company like Allagash, they only produce about 100,000 barrels of beer every year. Sam Adams is so large at this point, they're even sponsoring sports teams. They most recently became the official sponsor of the Boston Red Sox. Yeah, they knocked Budweiser off the list. And to be honest, I think we need more of that. Good American craft brewers doing sponsorship in place of beers that are, in my honest opinion, not exactly the highest quality. Sorry, Budweiser. More recently, Sam Adams was featured in a Conan episode where Conan O'Brien goes to the brewery and hangs out with Jim Koch. Link below. I also want to mention something the company did in 2019. They ran a campaign to raise a glass or toast someone. So basically someone did a study and found out that something like an overwhelming percentage of Americans, like 84% or something, have a hard time expressing appreciation for other people in their lives. Now, I don't know about you, but I myself am definitely guilty of this from time to time. So the company decided to raise a glass, and all you had to do was get a couple of Sam Adams and toast someone in the room who had a presumably positive impact on your life, which I think is really nice. We need more of that kind of spirit in this world. And in the words of Jim Koch, we could all do with a little bit more positivity. That's the history of the brewery, along with what Sam Adams is up to these days. But let's get to a more important question. What kind of beer does Sam Adams actually make? Turns out quite a lot, actually. Sam Adams has produced over 60 different styles of beer, allegedly. Their most popular beer is, unsurprisingly, their flagship Sam Adams Boston Lager. This is a classic, very nice, malty American lager, and interestingly, it's actually one of the first beers I started drinking when I turned 21. This is the beer where the recipe is allegedly based on Koch's great-great-grandfather's recipe for a Vienna-style lager. And interestingly, for a lager, because it's a Vienna-style, it's going to be a more sort of amber gold color, which is rather different from the usual more sort of lighter yellowy color we typically associate with lagers. Aside from the flagship lager, Sam Adams also produces a number of other beers, such as Sam 76. This one's designed to be especially crisp and refreshing. I personally have had a bit of a hard time finding 6-packs of this on its own. I tend to find it just as part of the variety packs though. New England IPA. For those of you who don't know, IPA stands for India Pale Ale, And we'll talk about IPAs in future videos, but the New England IPA is going to have a lot less hops than some other IPAs you might be aware of. It's going to have some undertones of orange and pineapple. And at 6.8% alcohol, packs a little bit of a punch. Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest is a very nice fall beer. It's a Marzen or Märzen style beer, and is going to have some malty undertones, a bit of weight, but not too much, and should be rather smooth to drink. Jacko Pumpkin Ale. This is going to taste like what else but pumpkins. It should also have some undertones of cinnamon, nutmeg, and some spices. Truly the flavors of fall. These are just the beers that we're going to be sampling in this video, but down the road we will be doing videos on other Sam Adams beers, especially some of their seasonal beers associated with the spring, summer, and winter. Alright, so that's what they make, and some of the profiles on the beers we're going to taste today. But let's get to the most important part of the episode, which is the actual tasting portion. So, to start out, we're going to open with the Sam 76. Pretty clear, actually. This is very, very pale. Very pale. Huh. That's really nice, actually. It's like a regular lager, but the thing about it that's so nice is there's that little extra complexity to it. What I mean by that is there's this extra level of, I don't want to call it citrus because it's not quite that strong. It's not that tart, but it's like almost citrus. It's kind of just there at kind of at the base of your palate where you can taste that there's something not even tart, but like just one step below tart. Now this is very well done. Sam Adams New England IPA. Okay, yeah, very cloudy, very similar color actually in some ways to the Sam 76, but it's a much cloudier color. Give it a sniff. Yep. Okay, I can smell those hops. And let's see what we got. I can definitely taste the hops, and the thing that's actually pretty good about this is the hops aren't really hitting me over the head. They're a bit more mild compared to some IPAs I've had. And also, this is just a quick side note. I myself am not a huge IPA drinker, but maybe from doing this channel, that will change. One thing I think I kind of like about this beer. It's an IPA, but it's not a super strong IPA. It's not some triple turbo end of the world IPA, and we all know those things are out there, and I'll probably be trying some of them at some point. But this doesn't have that. It's more mellow. It's more calm, and I personally actually prefer it that way. Next we have Jacko Pumpkin Ale. It does have a bit of an orange tint to it. I'd say sort of an amberish orange tint. I can smell that cinnamon. All right, let's start with those. Huh. I'm thinking less Halloween. I'm thinking more Thanksgiving. Interesting mix of things. I'm getting some cinnamon, some nutmeg for sure. I think that's what's actually coming through with this. And a bit of pumpkin too. Here it's very mild. I would actually say the pumpkin flavor may even be pretty much subsumed to the other sort of fall spice flavors. So I would think of this maybe a little bit less of a pumpkin ale and more of a fall spices ale with some pumpkin flavor thrown in for good measure. Next up, we're going to have the Oktoberfest. The rich and balanced traditional Marzen or Märzen. Got a pretty similar color to the pumpkin ale actually, if slightly more brown rather than orange, but no, it's about the same, similar color. Yep, that's really nice. That's great. That has a nice, really smooth malty flavor. It's the kind of thing where if you're looking to have something that's just gonna kind of warm you up almost, even though it's a cold drink, obviously it's just gonna feel kind of homey and nice and like calming. And that's kind of how I would describe this. I'm a big fan of Märzen beers. They're very good. It is time to try the last beer of today. Sam Adams Boston Lager. Yeah, this is a slightly less sort of orangey color compared to these other two, but yeah, sort of an amber sort of color. Let's give it a try. Yep, that's great. That's really nice. The thing about this, I think, that makes it such a good lager is that, like with the 76, but even more so, this is kind of complex. There's complexity to this lager. You know, it's got some of that malt, it's got some of that malty flavor that you get with the Oktoberfest, some of that weight to it that you don't have with the 76 or even kind of, I think, the Jacko. But along with that weight and that sort of malty flavor, there's a little bit of hops, but not too much. So it's this really nice balance where there's just some of that dry, popping in your mouth hoppy flavor, but it's not the sort of IPA grade floral hoppy flavor that you might get with something like this, or with any of the higher strength IPAs. I can't put my finger on what it is, but it's something that just feels what I can describe as a little bright. And it could be the variety of hops. It could be the type of hops that they're using in this in combination with a good sort of heavier malty base, which creates a really well balanced lager beer, and that's going to make a lager beer that's more interesting than a lot of the other sort of Pilsner style table lagers that you set out to find. Yeah, honestly, this is doing it for me. Absolutely. So to recap, well, none of these beers were bad or terrible or not at all my style. They were all certainly drinkable. Nonetheless, I definitely have a pretty clear rank ordering of how I see them falling in line with one another. And remember, these are just my personal preferences. So in last place, we have the Jacko. Kind of fun if I were having maybe 6 or 7 ounces of it. The thing about it though is, as I said, it feels more like something that's going to be a little different and a little seasonal to maybe put you in the holiday mood. But I think with all of the flavors, it's just there's a lot of nutmeg and cinnamon in this, and I'm not quite sure what to make of this sort of beer. It feels like a number of things that have kind of been combined, and there's not a lot of weight to it, which is what I'd like with more of a sort of holiday seasonal beer where you're indoors and it's cold and there's a roaring fire. So for that reason, this is going in 5th place. In 4th place, we have the New England IPA. Now, as I said, not a huge fan of IPAs, and this one in the scheme of things is pretty okay for an IPA. It's got that orange flavor, but not a sweet orange flavor, more of a semi-sweet sort of citrus orange flavor combined with some hops, and specifically a lot of floral hops. This is the kind of IPA, I would say that if you're like a huge IPA drinker and you've got a best friend and he or she's just like, they don't want to drink IPAs at all, and you keep saying like, hey, you got to try these IPAs, they're great, it's a great style of beer. If they keep putting their foot down and saying no, they won't, this might actually be an okay IPA to maybe start them out on, where you'd give them this to start and say, hey, here's an introduction to the concept of IPAs, where the hops isn't hitting you over the head, but it's there. That's kind of how I felt while I was drinking this, that as a non-IPA drinker, I still thought, you know what, this is okay. This is pretty good. I could definitely have a can of this if someone handed it to me. In 3rd place, we have the Sam 76. This is a great hot weather beer. I would say this is the kind of thing where if you wanted just a slight variation on your classic kind of light lager, this would be one to go with. Moving on. In 4th place, we have the Oktoberfest Malzen. And this is very nice beer. Much more, I think, my style than either of these two, where it's really a nice malty beer. It's got that bit of a heavy body to it. Not too heavy, not a stout or a porter, but for a Malzen beer, it's smooth, it's very easy to drink, and it would be a perfect beer to have multiple of, especially in a fall environment and even a spring environment. I get that this is a fall beer, but if I somehow came across this in April and you're drinking this in a beer garden at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, this would be perfect to have. So this is second from the top, but in 1st place, I really got to give it to the classic Sam Adams Boston Vienna style lager. This thing is a really, really nice balance of maltiness, little bit of hoppiness, and some extra complexity. But this is the kind of thing where you could pretty much drink it in cold weather, hot weather, up until maybe a certain point. I could drink this in the winter, drink this in the spring, holiday party, friend's birthday party, during the day, at night, what have you. Could drink it in pretty much any environment. Very versatile, other than a beach, and just sort of a really excellent beer that you're gonna be able to find at your local supermarket very easily. Let me know in the comments if you agree with this assessment at all, if you think I'm totally off. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you feel so inclined, why don't you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, or leave a comment if you're feeling adventurous. And be on the lookout for more beer-related content in the coming weeks.